Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's William here with the brand new video guys today. Welcome to my channel and do all things the algorithm likes. Today's video is going to be a little different than what we normally do around here. Normally we do videos on video games and only about video games, sometimes archery, sometimes some comic book stuff, but usually this is a video game channel. And today we got another reaction video for you guys today. But this reaction video is a different speed from the normal. So if you don't want to have a serious conversation, if you're not into serious topics that go on when it comes to society, diversity, sociopolitics, things of that nature, this video will not be for you when it comes to my reactions. But if you are into those things, if you are into that kind of dialogue, stick around and we're going to watch this video. This video is by Charlie Shion. Hopefully I pronounced his last name right. If I didn't, apologies to Charlie. This video is titled "The Anti-Asianness Within the Black Community." I saw this video recommended to me, and that's someone who's black. I wanted to dive into it and see what he has to say. I did a video a couple years ago, and I'll have it attached to your left, to your right, fun check it out, called "The Elephant in the Room," and I dived in to talk about some a kind of similar topic when it comes to being black and in the Asian experience as well. It's speaking through the lens of one of my colleagues, Some Young. So watch the video at the end of this video. Hope you all enjoy that. Let's get to today's reaction video. Hope you all enjoy. Let's do this. As always, videos that I react to are linked in the box below, and I can't stress this enough. If you enjoy the video, to the original video, leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe if you enjoyed his content, or anyone who react to content. Always show love to not just me, but people who are reacting to this is their original content. They deserve credit. So before we get started, I do want to talk about just briefly, and obviously I'm going to be cutting in and out throughout the video, but the reason why this stood out to me is because as someone who is black, who is part of the black community and experienced a lot of things as a 31-year-old within the black community, there's a lot of casual racism within the black community, and a lot of it drives from the thought process that if you're black you can't be racist, which you can be. And so there's like a lot of a lot of jokes being made, a lot of comments being made, a lot of stereotypes that get driven around in the black community, especially towards people who are of Asian descent, is very common. And black people don't really think of it as like being a bad thing. They think it shouldn't be taken serious. That's kind of like how I feel a lot of casual racism. That's what I call it, casual racism. I feel like a lot of casual racism is people who don't think of themselves as racist. They just think that the comments they make are just okay, or not be taken serious, and it should be taken lightly, and things like that. I've seen a lot of comments where I'm just like, if someone someone said something like similar as that towards a black person, you will be screaming top of your lungs on that being racist. I'm a firm believer in the saying that do unto others as you want done to yourself. So if I want someone to treat me a certain way, I should treat them that exact same way, and vice versa. So if you want people to be respectful to you and not be racist towards you, don't be racist towards them at the same time. So you can't want something from somebody else that you won't give them in return, if that makes sense to you. Let's get into this video.
Guys, I'm here to talk about the rampant anti-Asian racism I'm seeing from the black community.
Checking our audio, make sure we're good.
A year ago, to bring light to this specific issue. If you're here because of my last video, I have one thing to ask of you. Please like and watch the video in its entirety. That will broaden the video's reach. At the end of this video, I make a public demand. So I already know what some of you are going to say. This is causing racial division. We need solidarity. Not all black people are doing this. Why are you generalizing? White people are racist against Asians too. Why aren't you talking about that? What about the anti-blackness in the Asian community? It's the media that's making it seem like black people are harming Asians more. Yeah, this video is meant for you, to hopefully serve as a cold dose of reality. If you count yourself to be an open-minded person, I ask you to listen to what I have to say before jumping on to the comment section. The precise reason why I want to talk about this is because we live in a society where we Asian people can feel free to talk day and night about how white people are racist against us, but are immediately silenced when we try to talk about the anti-Asianness in the black community.
And while I was walking down the street from my high school to Walgreens, I was walking with three of my friends from both China and Taiwan, crossing the crosswalk. There is a car just rushed through us, driven by an African American, shouting that go back to your home, like go back from where you are from. We're not hurt, it's just shocked and scared of our safety. And this white lady kindly asked, can I call the police? Can I do anything for you? We were like, it's okay, thank you very much for your care. The point I'm making here is that we should not distinguish people by their race or gender or anything. Black people can be racist. White people, sorry. Oh no. I will make I will drag this out.
Let's start by saying I have very much a problem when a person of any race, white, black, Latino, or otherwise, commit hate crimes against Asian people. It makes my blood boil. And let's also start off by saying that when a black person harms an Asian person, that doesn't mean that all black people are certainly responsible for that. Just as in the same vein, when a white person harms an Asian person, that doesn't mean that all white people are responsible for it. I think I need to say this because our world is going crazy. You are only personally responsible for things that are within your control. You're only responsible for your own acts, nothing else. But then we can't just say black people harming Asians are the actions of the few and then end the conversation there. Because of the sheer magnitude of the problem. The near daily attacks, black people cussing Asian people out, punching and spitting and kicking Asian people and killing Asian people, there are dozens to hundreds of these cases.
One thing I was going to cut in a little earlier, but I want to make sure that the lady was able to like finish what she was trying to say. But one of the things that I was going to mention and to cut in was a lot of this discourse, a lot of the back and forth discourse. People talk about it creates division and things like that. A lot of people don't think about, you know, the severity of words. I said before that for the most part, everyone feels like on the internet, things should be taken serious. People feel like not everything is a serious thing. Some things are jokes. Like there'd be someone who probably feel like the people who yelled at that girl and her friends are people who are, you know, they're just being funny and things like that. It should be taken serious. Like it doesn't matter if you yourself feel like it's a joke. If you yourself feel like it should be taken serious. You have to consider the person on the other end. If they're not consenting to, you know, your comedy, if they're not consenting to your statements and things like that, then, you know, what you're doing isn't fully a joke. It isn't something that you just throw away as don't take it so serious. Because again, anything when it comes to dialogue is a two-way street. So if me and him are having a conversation and I'm just saying things and ignoring what his potential feeling could be, that's on me. You know, I have to speak in a way to where I can understand the person across from me and not just be like, oh, I'm not taking it that serious, so he shouldn't take it serious. Like, you can't dictate how someone receives words. You know, you can dictate the words that you use, but you can't dictate how someone receives them. And you have to be very cognizant of the thought process that people say things and what they hear and what the brain, you know, from what they heard is going to be different from what you intended. You can say, oh, I'm sorry, that was my intent. That doesn't matter. Like, sure, you should be sorry, but it doesn't matter what your intent was, because all that matters is how they received it. So again, going back to like the person who was shouting at the girl and her friends, they're probably thinking, oh, this is so funny. And it's like, no, it's not. You know, to give like another example, recently I was watching a live stream on Twitch, and this girl's asking, what's the best ways to make friends in Rainbow Six Siege? And how to like avoid the toxicity of people who are treating women like crap on that platform. And people were giving her like all these ideas and things like that. And it's like a lot of guys in the gaming community, they treat women poorly because they think it's funny. They think it's all jokes. People laugh at it. They're not thinking of the other person on the other end. You know, you go on social media and you see people make racist comments in news articles, things like that. They're not thinking of the other person on the other end. And at the same time, when someone has a conversation that he's trying to have, that girl tried to have, sorry if I call her that girl because I don't know her name, is people trying to like, you know, try to like basically kind of hush him up by saying, I'm sorry that you went through that. Let me cut in here. Like the black girl, she tried to cut in. I don't know what she was saying because we don't hear her, but she's probably trying to like apologize on behalf of black people. It's like, let her talk. You can do all the apology stuff after she's done talking, things like that, but let her talk. You don't interrupt her to try to be like, basically, I don't want to say a savior, but trying to be a savior in that situation of, let me step in here so she can see that not all black people think this way. No, let her finish speaking and then go from there. Because, you know, she went through a traumatic experience, and the worst thing someone could do is just cut her off when she's trying to talk about her traumatic experience.
Every month. Especially in the city of San Francisco, this is happening every day. And if you're saying hundreds, you're exaggerating. This is why I need to make this video. People are not realizing the magnitude of what's going on because the national news media is not broadcasting this fact as incessantly as one might expect if there were hundreds of videos each month of black people getting punched, spat on, and kicked. Only the rare exceptionally grotesque cases makes it onto the national news. At the height of the pandemic, they shined a quick and passing light on a number of these videos only because within that concentrated period of time, it became too obvious that this was happening and they could not afford to ignore it without losing the public's trust. But this is happening to this day, and your average anti-Asian hate crime makes it all the way up to local news. And the scattered and dispersed nature of reporting on what is happening means this problem is not rising to the public's consciousness. If you want to see the true scale of what's been going on, I recommend you watch my very first YouTube video I made a year ago. I listed out the black on Asian hate crimes that happened within the span of a month. It's one after another happening day after day. And bear in mind, these are only cases that A, is reported to the police, and B, that the news media picked up on. It's a small subset of a subset. In reality, there is a bigger undercurrent of this rampant anti-Asianness that we're talking about. Just within my own circle, I know multiple cases of this happening. They didn't report it to the police and it wasn't picked up by the news. How many more cases like this are out there? And at what point, after hundreds of these videos, do these cases no longer constitute isolated incidents? So then here's the most important conversation. If this is happening, what do we do about it? As I've said, this doesn't mean that all black people are doing this or that all black people are anti-Asian. But no matter how many times I say that, I found people still go like, oh, why are you generalizing? It's such a disingenuous attempt to deflect.
Sorry to cut him off again. I was just thinking about that. I had this conversation. This isn't about, you know, the racial discourse, but it's about the men women discourse, where a woman will go on social media, be it Facebook or Twitter, and she'll make like a generalized like comment about men, and then you'll have guys comment like, well, not all guys. That's what this is like. And it's like, everyone who makes any kind of like broad statement, you're fully aware that you're generalizing. Like, you don't have to jump in and be like, not all guys, or not all white people, or not all black people, not all this, not all that. And it comes off like as, now I don't want to say disingenuous, but it rubs people the wrong way when someone's not talking to you directly and you jump in as if they aren't talking to you directly. That's kind of what happens when you see those not all guys or not all women kind of comments. It's like you're putting yourself into the situation that doesn't involve you, and now you're taking it personally. You feel like it's a personal attack towards you. If someone's making a comment, be it this video, someone makes a tweet, Facebook, whatever, if someone makes a comment and they don't tag you, they're not talking about you. He's not saying that I'm anti-Asian because I'm a black guy. He's talking about experiences that he has seen, witnessed, and taken part in the reality that there are people throughout the entire world who are anti-Asian in every community, whether it's the black community, Latino community, the white community. Every community has people in it who are anti-black, anti-Asian, anti-Latino. There's people who are white who are anti-white. There's people who are black who are anti-black. So like, the discourse is there, and it shouldn't be denounced just because they're generalizing.
From having a conversation about this, and the conversation should go like this: we can all agree that when a black person commits an anti-Asian act or an Asian person commits an anti-black act, that doesn't mean that the entire communities are responsible for their actions. But to the extent that we're having group level conversations, for example, about the anti-blackness within the Asian community, so too do we need to have group level conversations about the anti-Asianness in the black community. And
Agreed.
The reason why this continues to happen is because we're not doing that. If you're saying, oh yeah, we already do, no, we don't. Conversations in private circles do not count. I'm talking about public discussions. I've kept up with these conversations. I've seen our Asian community so-called leaders have...
Sorry to cut in early again, but when he's talking about, you know, the fact that no one's talking about these publicly, think about how many times you ever heard the term "stop Asian hate." How many times have you heard that from anyone who's not Asian? Don't worry, I'll wait. How many times have you heard that on the local news, on CNN, on, you know, any kind of world news situation? How many times have you heard it from a content creator, a Twitch streamer, and how many times have you heard that saying at all? How many times have you seen it in as like a hashtag, "stop Asian hate" in their bio? Now think about that while you're thinking about how many times have you seen BLM or Black Lives Matter in people's bio or on world news, and with athletes. How many athletes who aren't black, like people who aren't black, will proudly use the hashtag Black Lives Matter, but you don't see those same people with Stop Asian Hate. So his point of, it's happening in private circles and it's happening amongst friends of multiple racial groups, who are communicating, but it's not happening on a large scale at all.
Conversations with Black community leaders on TV about race relations and talk over and over again about the anti-Blackness within the Asian community, and not a single sentence on the anti-Asianness in the Black community. Amazingly, I've seen mainstream news channels do special segments about Stop Asian Hate and mention within these segments the anti-Blackness within the Asian community without saying one word about the anti-Asianness in the Black community. On a segment that's supposed to be about our issues, our Asian leaders having conversations, doing public speeches, and on social media call out the anti-Blackness within our own, which is the right thing to do, but they stay silent as hundreds of videos emerge of Black people brutalizing Asians. I've been to Stop Asian Hate rallies and have seen, again, our so-called leaders denounce on stage the anti-Blackness within our community and talk about how white supremacy is dividing us all, and not a single word on the anti-Asianness within the Black community. And in those same rallies, I've seen Black activists, which thank you from the bottom of my heart for showing up, but I've seen them come up on stage and talk about anti-Asian hate without mentioning how there's a real anti-Asianness problem in the Black community. In fact, I have not heard a single Black activist, community leader, politician, media personality with a platform publicly mention a sentence about the rampant anti-Asianness within the Black community, much less have a long and sustained conversation about it. With the only exception of Sean King, I've seen Asian people be demonized for talking about anti-Asianness in the Black community on social media and in real life, while when Black people talk about the anti-Blackness within the Asian community, everyone nods along as a matter of course. And if you're wondering why all of that is going on, because it wouldn't seem to make sense, right? Why this disparate treatment? The mainstream narrative is that even if it's not a white person harming Asians, it's still white supremacy, because white supremacy pits communities of color against one another. And so even if Black people harm Asians, white supremacy is to blame. And then we're told we can't have a conversation about anti-Asianness in the Black community because it's divisive and we need solidarity and unite against white supremacy. Well then, doesn't that same logic flow to the anti-Blackness in the Asian community? If supposedly white supremacy is at fault when Asian people harm Black people because it pits communities of color against one another, isn't talking about anti-Blackness in the Asian community also problematic for that same reason? Because it's divisive and we need solidarity, unite against white supremacy, all of that? Yeah. It doesn't make sense. But I'll give you another explanation that I think more accurately describes what's going on here. What's actually going on here is that the Black community has greater political power than the Asian community within the political aisle that purports to represent all.
I'm glad he mentioned that because, again, I have another example to talk about with that. I have on my Twitch stream, I have a mod, we call him Popcorn. His real name's Renee. He's of Mexican descent. And he often asks, because on my stream, I allow people to ask me whatever kind of question they want. Sometimes he'll ask questions themselves about some political things, so it's about political things. And one of the things that he has a habit of asking and wondering about is how come other ethnic groups aren't as outspoken or have as much political pull as the Black community. And I often tell him, like, the reason is Black people are very, very vocal, and the Black leaders are putting themselves in position to basically be the mouthpiece for the Black people. And that when it comes to, for example, Latinos, not really like a thing. It's kind of like when it comes to like not even just Latinos, but every other ethnic group that's not white. What really happens is like it's people who have these vibes and have these villains, but they don't really push it onto people. Black people are very like, I don't want to like just be this blunt with it, but let's just use the word aggressive when it comes to pushing what our viewpoints are or what our feelings are. We'll shout from the rooftops. We'll tell our leaders this and this, and we'll make it well known. Whereas in the other ethnic groups, it's kind of like, yeah, I feel this and I feel this, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be viewed as an aggressor. I don't want to be viewed as anything negative. So I'll tell my family how I feel, to my friends how I feel, but I won't push the subject. I won't push the topic. I won't make a video like this and things like that. You won't see a lot of Hispanic or Asian celebrities take a stance on behalf of their own community and basically make themselves a leader. You won't see an Asian athlete do what LeBron James does. You won't see a Latino athlete do what LeBron James does. There's not that I don't know what the proper word to use for it is, but it's not that ability, that person who's basically being that mouthpiece for these other communities. In Popcorn, Renee, he was like, I never thought about it that way. I never thought that, there's no one who's speaking up for him and for his daughter and, his family. There's no one speaking up for him. So if he's dealing with any kind of racism towards Latinos, he just has to deal with it. If a black person is being racist towards him, or if a white person is racist towards him, or someone who's Asian racist towards him, he just has to deal with it. Whereas on the flip side, when you're black, you're like, okay, that was racist, I'm gonna let it be known. So there's a lack of mouthpiece, there's a lack of that thought, that confidence to just be very vocal. Like, there's a lot of people who are protesters, but they believe it's silent protest, in terms of they're upset and they want change, but they'll just sit and kind of like go with the flow, versus actually doing some activism, donating to causes, or vocally mentioning things, or mentioning any kind of like programs and things like that. Another example I'll give you when it comes to the lack of assistance that people who are Asian get from the other communities is, there was an article a few years ago, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, about racism from the Ivy League schools towards Asian students, and how they're basically trying to avoid having Asian students become to Ivy League schools. They're discriminating against Asian students, and no one really talked about that, because they don't really have that vocal mouthpiece who's going to see that article and be like, okay, I'm talking about this, and I'll get my other people to talk about it. Whereas in the black community, you'll have a number, if let there be an Ivy League school, just one who does something discriminatory, there'll be a number of celebrities, a number of athletes, a number of writers and publicists like that, who will be all over social media with millions of retweets, and all over Fox News and CNN and the local news, telling you about just that one situation. So that's kind of like how I feel about it, and that's kind of what I told my buddy who was on my stream.
All of us, the progressive left. With this disparity in political power and influence, we're seeing a situation where anti-blackness in the Asian community is being publicly discussed, but not the anti-Asianness in the black community. And this, is the reason why I feel the need to speak up against the wokeism ideology that has taken over the progressive left, because that is the thing that is underlying all of this. Because according to the ideology, there are two categories of people, the oppressor and the oppressed, with all the dimensions with which you could form discrete categories of people: race, gender, sexuality, so on and so forth. And within the category of the oppressed, there's rankings of the groups by how oppressed they are. And according to the dictates of this belief system, you can say whatever you want about the oppressor group, but you cannot say anything critical about groups that are higher up in the ladder of oppression, while you can say critical things about the groups lower in the ladder. And so what this ideology does is it accords groups highest up in the oppression ladder the power to dominate social and political discussions as it pertains to these group categories. That is the whole thing behind what so many people believe nowadays, that you cannot be racist to white people because they're in the oppressor group, and that black people cannot be racist because they don't have the power to be racist, because they're the highest up in the ladder of the oppressed category. And all the things that I've said earlier about how anti-blackness in the Asian community is discussed in the public sphere, but not the anti-Asianness in the black community, that is a manifestation of this belief system. Some people are under the belief that we can't talk about anti-Asianness in the black community because they're the most oppressed, and will silence you by saying that talking about it is divisive. But they don't say it's divisive to talk about the anti-blackness within our community. And in effect, this gives the black community the power to escape accountability because they have a support system of people of all races who believe that to hold the black community accountable is to perpetuate the oppression of the group highest up on the oppression ladder, and they will attack and vilify anyone who dares to speak about it. As it stands, we
live in a time period where everyone is labeling everybody, everything. So if you're someone who's person of color but you're not black, and you mention some things about black people and how they'll be racist towards your people and another group of people will call you racist for pointing it out. Like, that's the kind of society we live in right now. You'll be called, if you mention that someone's being racist, you will be called racist yourself for pointing it out. Even it's like that's not what racism point. Like, asking for accountability isn't racism, but people will go, oh no, you're racist for mentioning that this other race does these things, or for even like giving the idea that another person of color can even be racist.
People are free to talk about the racism we experience from white people all day long, no social repercussions. But we cannot talk about the racism we experience from black people without being canceled.
Black people can be racist. White people, sorry. Oh no.
Society tells us that we cannot talk about it. Then what that means is that you don't care about the racism we endure unless it fits your worldview and your agenda. So you don't care about anti-Asian racism, you just want to use us as a political pawn. And the same people that adhere to these views, many of them our own people, attempt to put blindfolds over themselves and others in order to explain facts that contradict their belief system. They see hundreds upon hundreds of these videos that have emerged last year, and they say it's the anti-black media that is making it seem like black people are brutalizing Asians, when it's white people doing it more. I'm sorry, but oh my god, am I exhausted with this conspiracy theory BS. Really? The media? The same mainstream media that espouse progressive views all day long, with the one exception of Fox News? The MSNBC show that has repeatedly had on people that talk about white people having a violent character? Or is it CNN, who will run breaking news segments when a sensational story about a white person inflicting violence on a person of color comes along, but tweets that a car killed 6 people when a black man who professes hate for white people on social media rammed through 6 white people during a Christmas parade? Is it the mainstream media that is making it artificially seem like black people are disproportionately harming Asians? Or is it the case that people are pointing to the less than usual instances where the media is actually showing what's happening on the ground and then saying it's anti-black to show it? The kind of reaction and public backlash which is the very reason why the media tends not to do this in the first place. And let me ask you a few more questions. If it was actually the case that hundreds of these videos are not representative of reality, that white people are doing it more, and that there are thousands of videos of white people brutalizing Asians that the anti-black media is surreptitiously hiding from the public, wouldn't we have noticed by now? If there were actually thousands of videos of white people brutalizing Asian people, isn't it far more likely that the media will be broadcasting it day after day, talking about this emergency, how white supremacy is endangering Asian Americans, since that has been their talking point all throughout? And if there were to be, hypothetically, hundreds of videos of Asian people beating, spitting, and kicking black people, will we not be hearing relentlessly in our public discourse how the Asian community needs to address the anti-blackness within? Wouldn't the black community rightfully be demanding that of us? So why aren't we? We need to start standing up for ourselves. Look, I don't need to say much more. If you're interested, you can watch the full 2-hour video I uploaded a year earlier. Just want to reiterate yet again, if you're a black person who is out there living their life and have done nothing to harm Asian folks, you're not responsible for any of this. Nobody is entitled to demand anything of you just because other black people are committing anti-Asian acts. And I just want to send a clear message to Asian folks that just because this is happening to us doesn't then give us license to respond back with hate to those black people who are not doing this to us.
Like that right there, that sentence is actually like really big. This is something that I mentioned a few times when we talk about the discourse between like what happens when it comes to like political like I won't say like political war, but essentially what creates more, you know, terrorism and people who become terrorists is the racism that they experience from Americans that drive them to it, or something that happens to them. Like it can be the very good people who, you know, they've never harmed anybody, never wish ill on anyone. Then their house got hit by a freaking drone strike, and now their daughter is dead, and now they're pissed off, so they become a terrorist. Or they're going to a high school in the United States, and someone keeps pulling off their hijab. And now, you know, when you do like any kind of form of negative actions towards someone, sometimes the reaction that they have is to be negative, is to be aggressive back. And he's just saying like, hey, don't be like harsh towards people just because, you know, this is happening. This is we deal with this a lot just as humans, where we don't know how to respond to aggression. So we feel like, okay, the best way to respond to any of this aggression that's happening is to just be aggressive in return. You know, basically like an eye for an eye. And it's like, you're not going to progress that way. Humanity can't progress with the eye for an eye mentality. And you know, people have to take accountability. People have to own up to what they're doing and things like that. But at the same time, like there's so many like groups out there who no one really speaks out for because they don't have a voice. And there needs to be a voice for all each individual group needs their own voice. Everyone needs to be at the same table talking about this kind of discourse, and people need to be open-minded to what's being said. Like if there's a big table of each ethnic group, everyone needs to be able to listen, not just speak, but listen to the other person what they're going through. Because just as he tells you about anti-Asianness from the black community, there be people who are Muslim who tell you the same thing. Like, yeah, I get a lot of freaking anti-Muslim and anti-Arabic rhetoric from the black community, not just the white community, because it happens. Every ethnic group has bad apples who are being racist or xenophobic towards another group of people, and it doesn't get talked about because, like you mentioned before, there's that pyramid of, you know, ethnic groups and where people place on it, and how people view your struggles and your issues. And at the top of that pyramid is black people, because we feel like we're the most oppressed people in the world. So we feel like it's our right to be at the top, and no one else can be a victim other than us.
Having said all this, the calculus is different for Black communities, political and thought leaders, and organizations who are engaging in public race relations discourse in an inequitable manner. So I would like to make the public demand the same demand I made a year ago in my original video. I demand that leaders of the Black community, whose only comments about the rampant anti-Asian violence amounted to "it's because of white supremacy," to publicly state that anti-Asianness within the Black community is a serious problem. And I demand that they lay out a plan, steps to take to curtail the Black on Asian racial violence that has pervaded our society without anyone saying anything. If we as a society are having ongoing public conversations about anti-Blackness within our community, so too should we expect ongoing public conversations about the anti-Asianness within the Black community. Thank you for watching. Wish me luck.
That was a really good video, and I'm glad that you recommended it to me, because we need to see things like this. We need to see more dialogue from everyone within the ethnic groups of humanity, not just my community, for example. And that's someone who's not 100% black, as someone who does have some Native American in him. I want to see people from the American as another group of people who are kind of silenced and don't really have a voice. Like, if whether you're a Native American person in Canada or in the US, you don't have a voice, and it's for the same reason why he doesn't have a voice. It's not his fault, but there is no leaders and no athletes and no celebrities who are taking a stance. And one of the things I'll mention, like Constance Wu's situation, where she went through when she went through, where she said she wanted to commit suicide after going through when she went through. I would say look into the Constance Wu situation, and it's like no one really talked about that. I saw it because she talked about it, but I didn't see anyone else like forward it or retweet it, or like no one. So, but had Constance Wu been black, let's say if it was Rihanna who said that, or Beyonce who said that, you would see that all over the place. Everyone would be talking about it. So like, you have to understand where he's coming from when it comes to his comments, and not immediately trying to like demonize what his feeling is, or view it as you need to, as a person who's not Asian, come out and say, I'm sorry on behalf, like you said, you're not responsible for other people. And this video isn't directed at you when it comes to the negativity that his community gets. And my mental thought when it comes to anything, when it comes to racism and race in general, is that there's only one race, just the human race, and within the human race there's ethnic groups, not racial groups. And yes, it's this utopian thought process that I do hope we one day get to a point where this dialogue isn't necessary, because we just see each other as one race, and who have an evolutionary trait that changed us based on what parts of the world our ancient ancestors moved to way back when humanity was all on one continent. But that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Do all things algorithm likes. Like his video. Go watch his video and all that good stuff. Catch you guys in the next one. Be a boy news man here. Deuces.